Nobody was even looking for Pluto. That's the part most people don't know. When astronomers first pointed their telescopes toward the dark edge of our solar system, they weren't chasing a tiny frozen world. They were hunting a giant, a massive invisible force, something powerful enough to drag planets off course, something big enough to shake the balance of the universe. They called it Planet X. For decades, scientists believed a hidden monster was lurking beyond Neptune, a silent predator pulling Uranus and Neptune out of line. The math didn't make sense, the orbits didn't behave, and when numbers don't behave in science, someone or something is responsible. But here's the twist. When they finally found what they thought was the culprit, it wasn't a giant at all. It wasn't powerful. It wasn't even close to what they expected. It was small, quiet, cold, and almost invisible. This is the story of how Pluto wasn't discovered because of brilliant planning, but because of a mistake, a misunderstanding in the math, a cosmic accident that fooled the entire scientific world for nearly a century. And the truth? It's even more dramatic than you think. The story really begins in 1781, when William Herschel discovered Uranus. It was a historic moment. For the first time in human history, someone had found a planet that couldn't be seen with the naked eye. The solar system suddenly felt bigger, more mysterious. But years later, astronomers noticed something strange. Uranus wasn't moving the way it was supposed to. According to Isaac Newton's laws of gravity, every planet follows a predictable path based on the gravitational pull of the sun and nearby planets. The equations were clear, the science was solid, yet Uranus kept drifting slightly away from its calculated orbit. At first, scientists questioned the math, then they questioned Newton himself. Was the law of gravity incomplete? But two brilliant mathematicians, John Couch Adams in England and Urbain Le Verrier in France, came to a bold conclusion. They believed another unseen planet was tugging at Uranus from beyond, something large, something heavy. And in 1846, purely based on calculations, Neptune was discovered almost exactly where the math predicted. It was a victory for science, proof that mathematics could reveal invisible worlds. But the celebration didn't last. Even after Neptune was added to the equations, Uranus still wasn't perfectly behaving. They were tiny inconsistencies, small deviations that refused to disappear. It wasn't dramatic, but it was enough to make astronomers uncomfortable. If Neptune wasn't the full explanation, then something else had to be out there. That's when the idea of Planet X was born. For years, astronomers scanned the skies. Many claimed they saw hints of it. Some even announced discoveries that later turned out to be false alarms. The mystery grew larger, the obsession grew deeper. One man in particular became consumed by the search. His name was Percival Lowell. Lowell was wealthy, passionate, and absolutely convinced Planet X existed. He built the Lowell Observatory in Arizona specifically to find it. Night after night, he studied the outer solar system, mapping stars, comparing positions, chasing tiny shifts in light. He believed he had calculated where Planet X should be. He even claimed to see signs of it before his death in 1916, but he never confirmed it. Years passed, the observatory nearly gave up on the mission. Then, in 1929, they hired a 23-year-old farm boy from Kansas named Clyde Tombaugh. Clyde didn't have a fancy degree, he didn't come from privilege, but he had patience, and sometimes patience changes history. His job was exhausting. He would photograph the same region of the sky on different nights using a special device called a blink comparator. By flipping between two images quickly, he could spot anything that moved against the background stars. Stars stay fixed, planets move. It sounds simple, but imagine comparing thousands of tiny dots in endless darkness, day after day, hoping one of them shifts just slightly. Then, on February 18, 1930, Clyde noticed something. A small dot had changed position between two photographs taken in January. It wasn't bright, it wasn't dramatic, it was barely noticeable. But it moved. After weeks of verification, the discovery was confirmed. The long-hunted Planet X had finally been found. The world celebrated. Newspapers exploded with headlines. School textbooks were updated. A young girl in England named Venetia Burney suggested the name Pluto, after the Roman god of the underworld, a fitting name for a distant, dark world. Everything seemed perfect. But what nobody expected was this. Pluto wasn't massive. At the time of its discovery, astronomers assumed Pluto had to be huge. After all, it was supposed to be powerful enough to disturb Uranus and Neptune. Some estimates even placed it close to Earth size. But Pluto was incredibly far away, and telescopes in the 1930s weren't strong enough to measure its true size accurately, so assumptions filled the gaps. And those assumptions were wrong. As decades passed and telescopes improved, Pluto kept shrinking. By the 1950s, scientists realized it was much smaller than first believed. Then in 1978, Pluto's moon Charon was discovered, and this changed everything. By studying Charon's orbit, astronomers could finally calculate Pluto's true mass with precision.
The result stunned the scientific community. Pluto was tiny, so small that it couldn't possibly disturb Uranus or Neptune in any meaningful way. It didn't have the gravitational strength, it didn't have the mass, it didn't have the power. The planet they had celebrated as the mighty Planet X was in reality a small icy world, barely 1/5 the size of Earth's moon. So if Pluto wasn't causing the orbital problems, what was? For years, the question hung in the air. Had there been another planet all along? Was Planet X still out there, hiding deeper in the darkness? Then came 1989. NASA's Voyager 2 spacecraft flew past Neptune, providing the most accurate measurements ever recorded of the planet's mass. And here's where everything changed.
The original calculations for Neptune's mass had been slightly wrong. Not dramatically wrong, just off by a small fraction. But in astronomy, even a tiny error can create huge consequences. When scientists corrected Neptune's mass using Voyager 2's data, they recalculated the orbit of Uranus. And suddenly, the strange deviations disappeared. The wobble that had haunted astronomers for nearly a century was gone. The mysterious gravitational tug? Gone. There had never been a massive Planet X pulling the strings. The entire search had been built on flawed data. Pluto wasn't discovered because it was disrupting the solar system. Pluto was discovered because the math was slightly off. Let that sink in. For decades, the world believed a giant invisible planet was lurking in the dark. Observatories were built, careers were dedicated, a global search unfolded. And in the end, the monster never existed. Pluto was simply in the right place at the right time, caught in a search that was never truly about it. That realization changed everything. In 2006, when the International Astronomical Union redefined what it means to be a planet, Pluto failed to meet the new criteria. It didn't dominate its orbit. It shared its space with countless icy objects in the Kuiper Belt. And just like that, Pluto was reclassified as a dwarf planet. People were emotional. Children wrote letters, teachers argued, adults who grew up memorizing 9 planets felt something personal had been taken away. But here's the deeper truth. Pluto was never the giant savior of celestial mechanics. It was never the force correcting Uranus. It was never Planet X. It was a cosmic coincidence. Yet somehow, that makes the story even more beautiful. Because Pluto didn't need to be massive to matter. In 2015, NASA's New Horizons spacecraft finally gave humanity a close look at this misunderstood world. And what we saw was breathtaking. A heart-shaped glacier, towering ice mountains, a blue atmosphere glowing against black space. The tiny world once dismissed as a mistake turned out to be complex, dynamic, and full of secrets. Imagine that. A planet discovered by accident, celebrated by assumption, demoted by definition, and redeemed by exploration. There's something deeply human about Pluto's journey. We search for one thing and find another. We build expectations based on incomplete information. We label, celebrate, and sometimes reject when reality doesn't match our story. But Pluto never changed. It remained the same icy traveler at the edge of the solar system, orbiting quietly every 248 years, unaware of the debates happening billions of miles away. Its existence wasn't a mistake. Our understanding was. And maybe that's the lesson hidden in this cosmic drama. Science isn't about being right all the time. It's about correcting mistakes. It's about chasing mysteries, even when they lead somewhere unexpected. It's about admitting when the numbers were wrong and having the courage to update the story. Pluto reminds us that discovery doesn't always happen the way we imagine. Sometimes we go hunting for a giant and find something small. Sometimes the monster under the bed turns out to be a shadow created by bad lighting. And sometimes the accidental discovery becomes more fascinating than the thing we were searching for in the first place. So the next time someone says Pluto was discovered by mistake, don't think of it as failure. Think of it as one of the most human stories in astronomy. A story of ambition, of flawed calculations, of obsession, of correction, and of a tiny world that captured our hearts despite never being what we thought it was. Because in the end, Pluto didn't need to be Planet X to be extraordinary. It just needed to be found.